All right, let's go.
So once you start indicting your political opponents, you know that you have to win or else they're going to indict you if they win, right?
Right.
And so they can't lose. They will do anything to win. So how do they do that? They're not going to do COVID again. I know everyone on the right's afraid they're going to do COVID and mask mandate. They're not going to do that. They can't do that. If they've already been exposed, that won't work. There's going to be, no, what are they going to do? They're going to go to war with Russia. That's what they're going to do. There will be a hot war between the United States and Russia in the next year. So if you're worried about that, you need to put as much pressure as you possibly can on the Republicans.
All right, so I realize that's days old news, the Tucker interview, but it bears repeating. I'm glad that people are finally coming to terms with the situation. And I can only imagine how many thousands of people were chastising us for the longest time for being sensational about this topic. Now one of their gurus is finally talking about it. So, hey, I won't hold it against you. Just please get prepared for what is coming. Now, we got a litany of information to share with you today. I'm just going to rattle it all off. But before I say that, I got to say, guys, people always talk about when is World War III going to start. There's not going to be any official demarcation until the thing is done. And that is the problem. You don't go into a movie and say that the movie hasn't started yet because you're not at the climax of the movie. Okay, typically the movie starts, about an hour or so goes by, and then you approach the climax and the movie ends. Okay, World War III is here. This is World War III. There is an agglomeration of strategic forces from all belligerents in this conflict right now in Eastern Europe as we speak today. So, with that in mind, understand that it wasn't until midway through the Second World War when people it became commonplace to refer to the current conflict that they were in as World War II. In fact, after the Great War, of course, they only had one reference point, the Great War in World War I. In 1919, there was one reference to it possibly being the Second World War. And in 1939, Time magazine came out and said, you know, maybe there might be a Second World War, but it wasn't until midway through, and really more so until the war was over, that it was referred to as World War II. So stop thinking that World War III is going to be demarcated by some announcement or some officiation. It's not. It's here. It's starting now. It's a continuation of wars that have happened in the past, a continuation of the end of the Cold War, I guess you can say, and what started, the events precipitating 2014 and all of that, and what is happening right now with the global shift towards a multipolar world. We are in World War III, so please do your level best to prepare for it. Now, this is what is going on today. Among other things that I'm probably going to forget. There's too many data points. Things are speeding up. It's going way too fast. And I tell you, it is smoky as hell outside. I've never seen the smoke this thick. We're in August now. I've never seen the smoke this thick. These fires are on a scale that I cannot, just every single day I'm amazed at how little people are amazed by what is going on. But people are just going to obliviously be normalcy Norman until the bitter end. Anyways, F-35s are headed to the UK by year's end. What's the hurry? Did you notice that all of these things are happening around the same time? They're all culminating around the end of 2023. What a surprise that 50 F-35s, nuclear-capable F-35s, as well as U.S. nuclear weapons, are going to be in the UK by as early as 2024, which could be anywhere between the end of this year until the end of next year. It's looking like it's going to be a lot sooner. 50 F-35s, mini nuclear stealth bombers. Okay? Why is it that the Sarmat 2 has been rushed into deployment and put on a high state of alert? This is a nuclear missile that has a longer range. You almost can't intercept it in any way. You could have in the past intercepted Russia's ICBMs during the launch phase, but this one, for whatever reasons, I don't know all the technical details, maybe Green Greggs or somebody like that can go into greater depth about this, but these ones are harder to intercept in the launch phase. Once they launch, they separate into multiple re-entry vehicles, 10 nuclear warheads, up to a megaton or so each, plus several dozen decoys. So the idea that you're going to shoot these things down when they're going 25,000 kilometers an hour, no, it's not going to happen. Putin said today, for a reason, and another really veiled nuclear threat, that Russia is invincible and it will not be defeated, and history supports that claim. As much as you think they've almost been defeated, they've come very close. They were knocking on death's door when Germany was at Moscow's border back in the day, but they somehow persevered. Anyways, we have countless doomsday planes, strategic forces, command and control centers, nuclear sniffer planes in the air around the world in irregular amounts right now, today, as these Sarmat 2 systems have been deployed. Now, this in itself is not much different than what Russia has had, all along. Yes, they're more technically capable missile systems, but they've always had 400 active duty ICBMs, if not far more than that, and a whole bunch of tactical nukes at the ready at a moment's notice. Plus, they got them on their Kinzhal hypersonic missiles now. The hypersonics are potentially a game changer. There's a myriad ways that Russia could effectively win a nuclear war against the United States. We're not going to go into that right now. October 4th, remember, we got the nationwide emergency alert test coming. I warned you guys about this last week. Why are all these things coinciding at the same time? Why earlier in the year were all the senators publicly given those satellite phones? Why the nuclear PSAs in New York? It's all starting to make sense, isn't it? The preparation for the public for a radiological event. It's all starting to make sense. EU is training 40,000 more Ukrainian soldiers, delivering them by year's end, as if they're a human resource. When I say delivering them, I don't mean to dehumanize them like that, but that's what Joseph Borrell has said. 40,000 more troops by year's end. Now, I don't normally talk about the tactical stuff, but understand it is the tactical that in many ways shapes what we're going to be discussing strategically. Because if the Ukrainians continue to make progress, make operational progress in the south around Robotyno towards Tokmak, then Melitopol, Mariupol, down into Crimea, that's when the likelihood of a nuclear incident ratchets up. And my friends, right now it is sky high. I broke down the other day how the numerous attacks on Moscow are increasing. You can probably sense the intensity is rising in my voice when I give these updates. That's not going to stop us from making our more... It's going to be difficult for people to get into that mode, but we're still going to be making our other types of content, which isn't so shocking, I guess you can say, but it has to be, because that's the nature of the situation that we are currently in, okay? We have Russia pulling missile defense systems from Japan. We are going to show you the exact systems that they're pulling. You can access all this information online. Russian military deployment maps. They will show you where they're pulling the actual S-300s from in Japan. Does this mean, a lot of people think, well, it's because they're running out of weapons. And even the think tanks of the West have now quietly determined that no, Russia is never going to run out of missiles or missile defense systems. They have 1,500 S-300 launchers. No, they're moving them from Japan because they've assessed the threat against NATO to be greater than the East. It's very likely that China has Russia's back in the East. That's why Putin has a plan to go and meet Xi Jinping very soon. They say, and when Putin and Xi Jinping meet, it's usually because something big is about to go down. Russia, and I've been saying this all along, they're preparing for a war with NATO. That's why they're holding their best forces in reserve. That's why right now they're letting the Ukrainians do this thing in Robotyno and they're shelling them with artillery. They got a lot of artillery to burn, but a lot of their forces just aren't really in this fight right now for some reason. And the reason is because they're preparing to go to full-scale war with NATO. Look at the slowly eroding away, the chipping away, the deterioration of the Russian border and the defenses within the country, moving that controlled airspace further towards Moscow. Now Moscow is talking about potentially having to shut down its airspace. I talked about this months ago, how eventually they're going to have to shut down their airspace for good. And that is going to create a massive blow to the economy. And the question is, how much will Putin allow this to go? Putin was quoted as saying last year that he hopes he will never have to wipe Kiev off the map, and not in those exact terms. But understand that there is a very large pro-Russian contingent element within Ukraine whose voices are currently and always have been suppressed. And this is proven and evidenced in the election in 2014. If you say this, it's taboo, but it's the truth. There's a latent support there. So I think what's happening is that Russia doesn't want to light it up because there are probably sleepers there who they want to take control of the government somehow. Now, how they haven't been able to navigate that environment from intelligence angle and send in spies and do covert ops yet is surprising to me. I just don't know why or how they haven't done that yet, if that is the case. But most definitely, that's what's happening. Russia is moving all the pieces into place to go to war with NATO because they are coming to them. The war is coming to Moscow right now. Ukraine is every day targeting nuclear facilities, chip manufacturing facilities. Just in the past couple days, they've targeted chip manufacturers, nuclear power plants, various military installations, critical infrastructure, just civilian infrastructure for the terrorist value of it all. So understand that this thing is escalating very, very fast, and you need to be prepared at all times. That doesn't mean you just, peeking out your curtains and you're not doing anything with your loved ones and you're not going and trying to enjoy life to the best of your capability right now, especially before the kids go back to school, which is why I'm talking so fast, because I'd rather be hanging out with them right now. Okay, so we're going to just rattle off the rest of this here as quickly as possible, but this is stuff you absolutely need to know. Today, Belarus claims that Poland sent a helicopter over their border, violating their airspace. Now, in the last week, according to the Ukrainian intelligence director, Budanov, who apparently is still alive, and let's save our jokes about that for later. Anyways, Budanov, who is still alive and 100% physical health, said that apparently the Belarusians have been simulating nuclear strikes on Poland and surrounding countries. Now, it's commonly known that the Belarusians have been training on Iskander systems, which will be the delivery mechanism for the nuclear warheads that they have received now just recently from the Russians. So all these things coalescing at the same time. You have the Abrams tanks coming to Ukraine in just a couple weeks' time. You have depleted uranium that's about to be sent by the United States to the Ukraine right around the same time that the tanks get there in order to shoot these rounds, okay? You have air-to-air missiles being sent in anticipation of the F-16s that are going to be sent to Ukraine. All of these things happening at the exact same time. You have 50 F-35s being sent to UK right around the time that Russia deploys its Sarmat missile system, like within the same week. That's not a coincidence. Shit is getting real. Depleted uranium to arrive mid-September. Russia prepares for war with NATO. More attacks on the Kerch Bridge, or attempts on the Kerch Bridge today. They had to stop traffic once again. Speaking of stopping traffic, routinely now, Moscow and surrounding airports in Western Russia are temporarily shut down. You won't see that on flight radar because, of course, the planes are still in the air, but planes won't be departing. So something to keep in mind. It's only a matter of time before a commercial jet, a passenger jet, gets clipped either by Russian defenses or by a Ukrainian drone, a Bobber drone, Beaver drone, or whatever types of cardboard stuff they're throwing at the fight right now that they're assembling inside or outside of Russia, for all we know. It's only a matter of time before they are forced to shut down their airspace indefinitely if these attacks start to ramp up even more. We have more systems being sent into Belarus, and this is a testament to the fact that the Russians aren't running out of weapons because they're sending some of their best equipment into Belarus. S-400 missile defense systems, some of their most advanced tank systems, their Iskander tactical nuclear weapon systems. They're sending it all there because they know the war is about to get hot. With respect to the border stuff going on between Belarus and Poland, Poland and the Baltic states are threatening to close off the border entirely. It's down to just a handful of checkpoints right now as is, and they've made passage into Russia's exclave of Kaliningrad. I don't even need this screen up today because I'm not even showing you anything on the map. Hopefully you all understand the geography by now. But they're getting very, very close to creating a blockade and preventing Russia from accessing the Suwalki corridor that goes from Belarus into Kaliningrad, and when that happens, things start to happen. Okay, things are already start to happen. This is the second cross-border claim charge by either side in just a couple weeks. I know there's going to be some guy out there still, and he probably was a Tucker Carlson fan until Tucker said that, saying, Nate, you're hysterical about this. You're being overly histrionic. Well, let's just see what you say in a month. Actually, no, scrap that, because some people are just going to be complacent and succumb to the normalcy bias until the bitter end. And for you, there's no help. I can only just hope you are trying to save face and you're still trolling in the comment section, but you're secretly prepping. That's typically how it is. With people who come on the channel and hate on preppers, typically that's what you do in the first phase of becoming a prepper, because you realize, oh shit, I'm totally unprepared. And in order to justify your lack of preparedness, you try to rationalize why prepping is stupid. Well, slowly, gradually, you become a prepper in the shadows, and all of a sudden, you're a prepping YouTuber. Maybe I speak from experience there. Abrams tanks by September. Ukraine striking all manner of targets within Russia, and it's only ratcheting up by the day. The Chechen leader Kadyrov has threatened the West. Kadyrov, as he's called, Putin's pit bull. He's the guy who Putin keeps around to keep everybody in line. You need those die-hard religious folks, the ride or dies, in order to keep all of your generals in line. After the Surovikin and the Prigozhin collusion, or whatever it was, however Surovikin was implied in that attempted coup, Putin comes out with a picture of his hand on Kadyrov's shoulder. As sickly as Kadyrov looked, he knows that Kadyrov controls 70,000 Chechens who will keep the rest of the military in line, and if he needed, possibly start to win the support of Muslims around the world in order to create some sort of, what would you call it? Not like an intifada, but like just sort of an uprising. That's their kind of into that crowd. So understand, Kadyrov is pissed off because the U.S. is sanctioning him and his family, and he doesn't like that, and he's threatening them. So maybe we'll see some more activity like the stuff that we've seen in Sweden today. We had the Baltics closing checkpoints. I talked about that. One thing to keep in mind about the Baltics closing checkpoints is that most, and I just learned this today, a lot, I shouldn't say most, I don't know the exact amount, but a significant amount of goods that come from China transit that corridor from Belarus into Poland. So if you're in Europe right now, I would strongly advise you, you need to be prepping your ass off. I mean, I'm in Canada. We're divided by a massive body of water. Even if we do get nuked, you guys are going to get the brunt of it, unfortunately. And if you're not a prepper in Europe and you come across this type of content, man, if I was in Europe, I think I would be balls to the wall. I mean, I probably wouldn't be in Europe, but in terms of my preparedness, I would be one of the crazy type people on Doomsday Preppers at this point in time. We're talking bunkers. Out here in Canada and the sticks, depending on where you live, there's not a lot of nuclear targets. There's fallout, potentially. We're definitely in the pathway of fallout because where I am, there's Minuteman missile silos a few hundred miles south of here. But if you're in Europe, you need a bunker. I mean, you better be calling up Ron while the getting is good. Well, maybe there's a little bit of a lull, because I have a sneaking suspicion it's not going to be long before we see the big flash bulb event that is going to get everybody into a tizzy, and we're going to see another run on the toilet paper once again. And that's probably a good thing that the food will be freed up. So, if you're smart, get the food while everybody else is getting the toilet paper, and only to get home and realize that they have no food to wipe it away with. Oh, what else we got to talk about? Smokiest day of the year, man. It is smoky as hell outside right now. It is absolutely insane. Now listen, I got to show you one more video because this is crazy. This is crazy. This is crazy. Not this. That's crazy too. That's the Sarmat missile. This is crazy. Now, the Russian propagandist, Solovyov, or whatever his name is, the key guy, he often says a lot of crazy shit. Okay? But this is probably amongst the craziest shit that he said and the most definitive. And you can tell that people here are as shocked and as terrified as they were that one night when Prigozhin was advancing on Moscow. I'm just going to narrate it, okay? It's very sad, he says, because it's all in Russian anyways. It's sad because we're on the verge. There's subtitles below if you wonder how I'm reading this. Of a global hot war. It's unavoidable. It's inevitable because it benefits everybody. It's inevitable. The war of Ukraine and NATO against Russia since 2014, he says, did away with the taboo of going to war with a nuclear nation because it would inevitably lead to nuclear war when it became clear that you can pull the tiger's whiskers or the bear's paw. All of them have decided, okay, let's go. These are the end times, he says. We should realize this. This is the guy, okay, listen, understand when he's saying this. This is the main guy that Russians are watching right now. He's saying that nuclear war with the United States is inevitable and that it's the end times. Now, I presume that some people don't take this guy entirely 100% seriously, but everything that is currently happening on the map corroborates with this thesis. The mission creep towards Moscow is clear as day. I mean, you got stealth bombers. For the first time ever, a stealth bomber landed in continental Europe, and it was a widely publicized thing just a couple days ago. They refueled in continental Europe, and they did that for a reason. They're putting Russia on notice that we're ready to go to nuclear war. Think about how rapacious the greedy oligarchs are in our society. We always talk about the Russian oligarchs. There's oligarchs here too. They're just smarter. They're craftier. Think about once you've had everything, and when you realize that your entire fiat-based monetary system is based on like neo-colonial imperialism, and that there's no other place to imperialize, and that you have to start, what you put on the shelf after the Cold War ended, you got to go and pick that up again because that's the only way you can continue the infinite expansion. So you're eyeballing Russia and its trillions of dollars of resources, its backdoor into China, who of course is going to be the big challenger in the 21st century. You're going to make that move because you're greedy. Think about what people do for greed. People say, well, they're not going to gamble. Yeah, but it's different when they have less to lose than all of us do. They have bunkers. They have contingency plans. They probably even know the real science about the survivability of nuclear war. They really have a better sense of what will happen and where they need to be. When I say they, it's a lot of thing. It's a lot of you peopling going on. I get it. But I think that the greed is a powerful thing, and I don't think it should be underestimated. We always think nobody would ever want to do that, right? But greed is a powerful thing in groupthink. When paired with greed are two very, very powerful forces. Paired with paranoia, paired with people not wanting to go to jail, as Tucker articulated there. Those are dangerous things to have together, okay? Anyways, let me just continue. America does not fear nuclear war because they're separated by an ocean. There will be a war for sure, he says, either in Europe or in Asia. Americans say very honestly and pragmatically, this poses no threat to us. These people are ready, he says, to take the world to its grave along with themselves. For that reason, Tucker Carlson's arguments sound like a self-fulfilling prophecy. And he lets Tucker talk here. I'm just going to skip ahead because we already just listened to this. Who says that? He says, a dead man walking. Tucker is a dead man walking, he says. A dead man walking. He sincerely believes that the next step after the accusations and the declaration of impeachment will be an assassination of Trump. But this man, who is currently the most popular English-speaking journalist, and that pretty much is true no matter how the legacy media tries to suppress that fact. I'm not saying that that the mainstream still doesn't have the dominant market share in that space when you add up all of their talking heads, but Tucker is the most notable one. And I'm not like I'm not a personality cult of Tucker guy. You guys know I'm always skeptical. There's things that I agree with, and I do agree with him that, yeah, there's a lot of motive right now to keep the party going. If you're fearing that your opponent is going to turn that gun on you, then you might do some crazy shit. You might start shit. You know that there has been no president who's been expelled from office during a war, and even if it's not Biden, the incumbent, they'll want it to be somebody who, is going to play the game. And that could be a Democrat or a Republican. I'll tell you this, doesn't matter who gets elected, this war is only going to increase. Don't be dissuaded by politics. They will not forgive him that he strives to interview our president, because Tucker wants to interview Putin and post it on a platform that has no censorship, he says. Well, that's not true. X is, right now, they're masquerading as the good guy and they're bringing you in. Just remember that one of the fastest, coolest cars in the world has cameras everywhere and records everything you do. It even has a camera pointing in the cabin. I have one. They're freaking amazing cars. They're like rocket ships. It's like driving the future when you put it in the autopilot, but it's a trap. It's a trap, guys. Anyways, please go and get yourself a copy of Nuclear War Survival Skills. You can get it for free. You can download a copy online. If you cannot afford to purchase a copy, I think it's like $20, but I'm telling you, we interviewed one of the adjunct authors of this, Stephen Harris. We did probably 2 or 3 interviews. We actually still have part of an interview that we're going to release with him because I think it's very timely right now. October 4th, they're going to be doing the emergency alert broadcast system test, and that's going to be big. It's going to maybe get people thinking just a little bit. And this book it's been made so that the average person, it was made, I think it was in the 70s that this was written, if I'm not mistaken, possibly earlier than that. But it was made so that people, 1979, so that anybody could pick this up and that they could be able to read it, not in a pinch, because when the bombs are coming, that's too late, okay? Well, for most stuff. But you want to read this beforehand. Very easy to follow, very engaging, and like most informational videos and tutorials from back in the day, like I was watching a tutorial on how differentials work back in the 40s, and they explained it so simply and perfectly. And you just don't get that level of simplicity anymore because we've strayed so far from what the core first principles of a lot of the mechanics of the technology that we currently use is. So back in the day when they were closer to the first principles of how things work, they could explain it a lot simpler. Same thing with this book, man. Like right now, there's a lot of convolution in the space of how to survive nuclear war, what's what, and sure, there's a lot of unknowns, like what the post-acute effects are going to be in terms of nuclear winter or whatnot. But that's a book you need to have. We are working with our resident nuclear physicist. Believe it or not, we have nuclear physicists working with us here. In fact, they work next door assembling Geiger counters. These are special Geiger counters. They're not made in China. They're made right here in Canada. They are specially tuned for the purpose of detecting the types of radiation and fallout that you're going to see in a post-nuclear world. Many of the Geiger counters being sold right now don't have that. We don't currently have in stock. We're getting ready to roll out another rather large batch here, I'd say in the next month or so. I'll give you guys a heads up. My viewers always get the heads up of when these things are rolling out. And we've done videos with this particular physicist before, one of them, and we're going to bring them back again to explain the difference between these things because, I mean, we're just on a clear escalatory pathway towards nuclear fucking war. I mean, it's crazy, man. It's absolutely crazy. You really almost have to sit back, like, because we talk about it so much. And here I am rambling on. We talk about it so much that we become deadened to the reality of what it's actually going to be like if it happens. Even if it's limited, I'm worried about the panic. I'm worried about what people are going to do. And when people start freaking out, you start having to take more excessive measures when it comes to the imposition of the rule of law, martial law. You know, if we don't get, and I don't think we're going to get locked down again. I agree. I mean, they're going to try to bring back the mask, but, you know, I'm not worried about that at all, unless I am worried about that if another virus comes. And we could very well see a bio-war arc happen with this war. That's a big concern for me. But in terms of, no, I mean, this past thing has run its course in terms of its dystopian utility to our oligarchical overlords. So I'm not wouldn't worry about that too much, but I would worry about a big media crackdown and just a general crackdown and mobilization against any sort of dissident narratives when the shit approaches. The closer we get to the end, the bigger the lies are going to get. Just remember that. You know, I wrote that in a Twitter comment on a video with Zelensky talking about stuff. I said, the closer we get to the end, the bigger the lies are going to get. Same thing with Buddy in the movie The Downfall. You know, it was in The Downfall. I mean, and think about how many, you know, during the collapse of Germany, they still had millions of troops still on the payroll, but the military collapsed. Okay, so, you know, you can tell big, tall tales right to the bitter end. So just something to keep in mind. I'm not saying Ukraine's at that end yet. I really don't know. Nobody knows. We don't know. The fog of war is just too damn thick right now, like the smog and smoke in my region. Take a look at this frickin' picture right here. Look at this. That's not clouds. Okay? That's smoke right now. That's real-time satellite. Not real-time. This was taken about half an hour ago. That's clouds. This is smoke. This is the smokiest I've ever seen it here in this city. And we're in August. These fires are biblical. I cannot think of a better word. They are biblical. If there ever was something in the book of Revelations, this was it. And I really don't even think this is the big one. If you guys have been with me for a couple of years, I talked about this. I talked about how the mother of all fires was coming, like the big fire. The only reason why this isn't making a lot of headlines is because it's so sparsely populated where the fires are actually burning, thank God. But the smoke is coming down. So there's this massive plume of smoke, as you can see, and it's going to be heading eastwards. Fortunately, it's not going to be heading so much southeast, so it's just going to come along here, go right out into the ocean and right across to Europe, hopefully, and spare us. Europe's catching all kind of smoke right now. And it's going to maybe skim Toronto a little bit, but, you know, these fires are just raging. Already over doubled the amount of space burned. And that's an understatement. It's more like triple, I'd say, at this point. The statistics haven't caught up yet. The fires up here in this region are just, I mean, it's just going to be scorched earth up there. I can't imagine living in some of these small communities. People must be getting chronic health. That's why they've evacuated all of Yellowknife, and it looks like that fire's still burning there. Anyways, guys, have a good weekend. I know it's, you know what? We're still going to have fun on the channel. We're going to